So good morning, good evening, whoever is from where. I'm calling in from Malaysia, obviously, because that's where I live. And if you can hear me well, hey Jason.
Hey, Kristina.
If you can hear me well, please wave, say something, and tell where you're from. So yeah, we've known, I guess, quite a few years now with you, right?
Yeah, it's been quite a few years we've known each other, but I actually remember specifically it was AFES Jamaica when we
Uh-huh.
really started to drop in and started to talk and have conversations. Because before we were always just kind of running around and just passing each other. But I distinctly remember having a conversation in Jamaica, and that was the first time we really dropped in. So that means it's been over 2 years now that we've really been connected.
So I just give a little bit of context. I started doing this kind of conversations actually last week only. I've been thinking
Great.
about that for a while, but sometimes it takes time to get yourself together and start doing the thing. So, the funny thing is that because I was thinking, okay, so who would I like to interview? And on one side, I'm a co-founder of Mind-Valley. I'm the face of Mind-Valley in Russian, and I've interviewed the most spectacular people from our collection. And by spectacular, I mean people who everybody knows, with super famous names. And I thought, I actually want to talk to people who are friends, who are who are a little bit like me. And I don't care so much about do you have a big following? Do you have a best-selling book? Have you been on opera?
I mean, I
Probably
have. I have all those things, but it's fine. I get it. It's fine.
Probably they will once in a while slip in, but my filter is actually who would I like to chat with? And yeah, so I'm glad you're not, you're now one of the first guests. It also means that I'm not very eloquent yet because I'm still learning and finding my style. But what I've noticed, because somebody said here, I was last week and it was awesome. Truly last week was a remarkable conversation because I want to talk about things which are close to my topic, about life. I'm an everyday life philosopher, but it turned out to be more of an honest conversation than anything else, because sometimes I would ask a question and think to myself, oh my God, am I asking that live in front of all those people?
Yeah, good. That's my favorite kind of conversation to have. So we're in the right place. I want to go there. I don't want to have any surface BS. Let's talk about stuff that really matters. Because if it matters to you, it matters to other people. And it matters to me. The stuff that we don't want to talk about is the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And it's still the stuff that affects them. So not talking about it doesn't make it any less relevant to people's lives.
So, dear, tell me, why did you pick this topic? Because I let the people pick that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, okay,
people might not know. Sorry.
Yeah. So let's tell them. Yeah. Do you want to tell them?
So it's about not taking life seriously,
Yeah.
which I really love, because the motto of my life for now more than 20 years, I'm ashamed to say that probably closer to 30 years.
Since you were 2 years old, fine.
So it has been Oscar Wilde's quote, and I love Oscar Wilde. He's the best source of quotes. Life is too important to be taken seriously, and that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a huge topic. It's become the core of my work, and I think there's a big misconception that because I talk so much about living a more playful life, or not taking life so seriously, or finding ways to cultivate more joy, or whatever it is, that I must be this naturally joyful, happy all the time person. And it's just not true. It's not reality. I grew up, and from a very young age, I dealt with depression. I dealt with anxiety. I had suicidal ideation into my 20s. I mean, I had a lot of challenges, and a lot about this too, with my story as far as my weight, my physical weight. I was overweight my entire life, and up to the point where I got up to 332 pounds in my late 20s, which is almost 160 kilos. And so I was a very big guy. And so I dealt with this my whole life, and it all stemmed from this feeling, and I'm sure people here can identify with this, of not feeling enough, right? From a very young age, I felt unworthy, unlovable, whatever it was. My dad left my mom when she was 6 months pregnant. What do you think that does to a boy whose father was never there? Oh, he left because of me. I wasn't good enough. I had all these stories that I made up, and so it made me so sad. And it also had me have difficulties making friends with people, because I was kind of like a nerd, and I was the fat kid, and so I didn't make a lot of friends. And so I said, listen, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to not have friends. Girls are not attracted to me. They don't look at me as a potential boyfriend. People in school are making fun of me. What can I do to change this? What can I do to actually foster and facilitate more authentic connection with people? I didn't have this language as a kid, but looking back now, I realize is what I was doing. And what I realized was that if I could make people laugh, if I could bring joy to people's lives, they would want to be around me more. And so what I realized was, okay, if I can start showing up in a way where I give people what I am not able to receive myself right now, I will in turn receive that thing myself. And so it became my entire mission, without even knowing it as a kid, to just make people laugh. I was the class clown, or I was the one that, like, you know, would cheer people up, or if girls were sad, they would come talk to me about their problems. So I'm like creating connection, I'm creating empathy, I'm creating all these things that I needed to have because I felt this emptiness inside of me. Now, the great thing is that over the years, I've done the work, and I'm a human, so I still deal with this stuff, and that stuff definitely still comes up. But what I've realized is the more that I can help other people feel joyful and playful, the more it's easy for me to take care of myself and have more joy and more play in my own life. So it's not this like, hey, let's just all freaking shoot water guns at each other and like drink and party and have fun. It's like, no, this is a soul's calling for me to make sure that everybody I meet, I want to leave them with at least 5% more joy than I found them. So that's why it's important to me.
So I just want to understand a few things. So
yeah.
When you started acting this way, and you're actually a professional comedian as well, which is really awesome.
Somewhat.
You know, I have to confess, being a comedian, especially stand-up comedian, is for me one of those things which I can just never understand. I could never understand how can anyone write music, and I can't understand how can anyone stand in front of people and make jokes, because it's just such an alien, complicated task. So yeah, you're like a mystery. You're a unicorn. You're the person, you know, you're a magical creature that.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take the magical creature. Thank you.
But my question is this. So obviously you were younger and probably, you know, psychologically not as versed as you are right now. So it started off as a desire to please, or maybe not to please, but to do that for the others, not for your own sake, but so that you're liked by the others, that you're noticed by the others. And now it has transformed. So, you know, I have this weird concept. Before we were having a call, I was thinking of the clown, you know, who's crying, or in my favorite book, Master and Margarita, they have this super clownish character who's incredibly enjoyable and funny, and then at the very end of the book, he reveals his true face, and he's very sad, and the story is that he's so sad that he keeps joking. And then there was also this fable about the city that has been was under siege, and the king only gave up when people in the city started laughing, because he said, okay, obviously they have nothing more to give. So I suddenly realized how much is this laughter and joy. And the more I think about that, the more examples are coming to my head, is this final stage when you're like, there's nothing more to lose. So you start just laughing about your life.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and this is something where they talk about this as well in Buddhism. I don't remember who it was, but there was some Buddhist philosopher who the day that he achieved enlightenment, he started laughing because he realized there was actually nothing to achieve to begin with. He had been there all along. It was just that he was like taking life too seriously, or he was searching for something outside of him that was supposed to give him enlightenment, instead of seeing that it was an inside out job. And he starts laughing at himself. And I think there's something, so there's two things. So number one, I think, yes, I think comedy, laughter, humor can mask pain. Absolutely, 1,000%. It can be a mask to hide behind, a shield, a veil to hide behind. And at the same time, I believe comedy and humor can also heal pain, right? I think you can do both. It can mask the pain and it can heal the pain. So what I have to be conscious of is to make sure that I'm using my humor to heal pain and not to mask pain. And so that's been a beautiful thing for me, is that, you know, it's funny you said this whole foreign concept or alien concept of being a stand-up comic, but being a speaker, you still get up there and you get naked, right? You're up there. I mean, you know, not physically naked. I mean, at least not the kind of talks that we do, but you know, but not, yeah. The next day fest. Yeah. Jordan, everybody's naked. But it really is. You get up there and you, if you're a speaker who really wants to connect and really make a difference, and you're not just trying to be like the polished, you know, sage on the stage that just looks amazing all the time, and you actually want to be authentic and connect with people, then like that's a really important thing to do, is to be able to share your comedy, but also to share your pain. And it's what connects us. So I think that there's a lot of the biggest stand-up comedians in the world are deeply entrenched in pain, and this is their vehicle to be able to express that is through comedy. So it's a beautiful thing. Humor is a beautiful thing when used the right way.
So do you think that it doesn't matter? Because you see, I come from the post-Soviet background. And in our part of the world, there are sayings like, laughing without reason is the sign of idiocy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or that, if you're like, for example, in post-Soviet environments, you don't see people smiling at each other on the streets because it's considered creepy. And they even like with some kind of superiority say, oh, Americans, they just always smile, but then there's nothing behind that smile. So would you be this discriminative about humor and laughter? Like, oh, only laugh when you're truly, truly, truly happy. And don't laugh about it.
Not at all. I love that. I think it's funny, like the whole thing about like, laughing without a reason is crazy. And it's the same thing as like feeling like being a pessimist is sophisticated. A lot of people think they're like, that's very, no, I'm sophisticated. I'm a realist. It's like, well, maybe, right? We're all lying to ourselves constantly, right? Because everybody walks around with stories in their head about what they think is true. And then they view the world through that lens, and it becomes their truth. So everybody's right and everybody's wrong. It doesn't really matter, right? But I get that. I remember going to Poland. I was in Warsaw back in like 2013, 2014, and I was trying to high five people on the street, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And I asked somebody that was a local there, that was like somebody who we were with, and I said, hey, is high fiving not a thing here? And they're like, no, they know what a high five is. They're just not going to high five you. I'm like, why? They said that's just that they don't do that. Post World War II, they don't do that. They keep to themselves because they need to protect themselves. There's something that needs to be protected. So I think there's a sense in certain parts of the world and in certain cultures. I don't think it's just a nationality thing. There are certain cultures where really all cultures in some way, shape, or form do not want to be perceived as weak. Now, ones that have had tremendous things happen in their history, like being in the post-Soviet era, they really want to protect themselves. They never want to be seen as weak. They are never going to be either taken advantage of, or depending how your perspective is on it, they're never going to have something like that happen again. And so if there's any chance that like laughing is going to make them weak or susceptible to be taken advantage of, they're not doing it because that's a threat to them. So we need to realize, and this is not just for people in Eastern European countries or anything else, we need to all look at the fact that there are things we're holding on to that we think are going to protect us, but they're actually holding us back from the full self-expression of life. And that's a challenge sometimes.
So basically people feel, because obviously a person who is in good humor and who's laughing and who's funny, they're approachable and you're not afraid of them. So you think that we refuse that expression of ourselves so that we are a little bit more sinister and people are a little bit more afraid of us?
I love that you went right to sinister. And the way you said the word, you were like, sinister? Like you really, that was like a perfect embodiment of the word sinister. Yeah, I think there's something to do with that. This is the same way, Kristina. Have you seen how men, not all men, but how it is typically a male quality to see anger, right? To see anger or rage. Anger and rage is typically more assigned to men than it is to women. Women can get very angry and ragey as well, but it's typically men. So here's the thing though, is that men get angry because it's an acceptable form of fear, right? It's acceptable, right? That's why they do it. So I remember, like, if I get cut off in traffic, or if I accidentally cut somebody off in traffic, and this happened to me a few weeks ago, I accidentally cut somebody off in traffic. I was paying attention, but I guess not enough, and I cut them off. And this guy is like yelling and screaming, and he's like flicking me off and like doing all this stuff. And he pulls up next to me and I say, hey man, I'm so sorry. That was totally my bad. And even though I completely fell on my sword and took responsibility, he couldn't break from his anger, because if he broke from his anger, he may look like he's a weak man, and he's afraid of looking weak in front of another man. He's not actually angry. He's trying to protect himself from fear. And so that's something really important for all of us to look at, is that for men especially, anger is more acceptable expression of fear than just saying you're afraid. And to notice that, like, anybody that feels this way, it all comes down to fear. We all fear fear. Every single one of us feel fear. There's nobody, unless you're a sociopath or you're heavily medicated, we all feel fear. But it's just to recognize.
Can you repeat it again? Because I really love anger is an acceptable form of fear. Expressing fear, right?
Yeah, anger is a more acceptable form of fear. Yeah, anger is a more acceptable form of fear, especially for men. But here's the thing. Here's where it comes for women now. Women have been taught that they have to be a certain way to be taken seriously in the world, right? That now, like, you have to be like this hyper masculine. It's not okay to be feminine because men aren't going to take you seriously. And you know what? I'm not for a second going to say that's not true, that some men are dicks and you have to like really puff up your chest and like, you know, go for what you want and push and do all these things to get them to take you seriously, that's because they're afraid. Like men are so afraid. It all comes back to fear. Like men are so afraid of doing that. But for women now, this whole thing has come as well, right? So women will act angry. Women will get overly assertive or aggressive. It's because they are afraid of being seen as weak. So if we would all just come to the table and the man in the office would say, you know what, woman, I'm very afraid of you because you're extremely smart and I'm intimidated by your intelligence. And if she said, well, you know what, I'm afraid that you're just never going to take me seriously and I really wish that we could collaborate and work together. If we had those conversations, the world would change. But that's too vulnerable for most people to do right now.
Mm-hmm. I actually agree with you because people always ask me about, you know, how to be powerful at work, and it's a slightly different topic, you know, the how to be a woman in the masculine world. But the more I've been asked that question, the more I realize that our power is not in becoming man. Our power is in being what we are. Because, you know, in Russian they have this interesting saying, I can't translate it because it's just a bunch of words. But what it means is that you can push your way through by being, you know, masculine in a way, in a classical sense, like, you know, strong and powerful. Or we women, we are marathoners. We can achieve things and show our, you know, power, assertiveness by just being firm in what we believe. And you don't have to have a loud voice to be firm. You just have to have an iron core behind the mushy feminine appearance.
It's so true. You know, they've done studies on this too, because, excuse me, what a lot of people would call this is charisma, right? And people who are charismatic, statistically, this is not to say this is true for everybody. Statistically, people who are seen as charismatic are more traditionally successful, right? Whether that means position, status, money, whatever it is, people who are charismatic tend to be more successful. And what people think, a lot of people, is that that you're born with charisma, that you have to be super outgoing and over the top and energetic to be charismatic. A lot of people think that. They meet me and they go, oh yeah, you're a charismatic person. I could never do that. Here's what the studies have shown about charisma. Charisma essentially comes down to three different components. Very, very simple, three different components. It is power, presence, and warmth. Power, presence, and warmth, okay? Whether you are the manliest of men or the most feminine of women, you can come from a place of power. Power doesn't mean aggression. Power doesn't mean force. Power doesn't mean coercion. Power doesn't mean pushing somebody else down. Power means standing in your power, having conviction in who you are and what you stand for. Presence, really being with somebody, not being distracted, not just not being distracted by other things going around or other opportunities or other people, but not being distracted by your own thoughts, really being present with the people that are in front of you. And then warmth. Now, most people would say, oh no, there's nobody charismatic who's warm because warm is weak, right? No, warm is inviting. Warm says, I'm somebody you can speak to. In fact, I'm somebody who cares about what you have to say. So if we develop power, presence, and warmth, you can be masculine or feminine, and you can be as charismatic as anybody else in the world.
You know what I was thinking as well? So I have this funny habit of joking in any kind of circumstances. I believe, I haven't been to funerals much, but I believe I would probably be one of those idiots who would joke at a funeral about something. At least I have a funeral joke I came up with. But anyway.
I have one too. We'll trade. I have a great funeral joke. We'll trade.
But and in old days, I had a tradition in my own team that we'd always start a meeting with a joke. And I joke at the meetings, but you know what? Another thing that I noticed, I do that because I genuinely believe that it creates a better atmosphere. Sometimes it breaks the ice of uncomfortable conversations, or if somebody's arguing with the other person, and when you laugh, when you joke and people laugh, it's easier and people can move on. So I personally believe in joking. Even when I'm angry with my children, I would say that I'm going to punish them, but that I will increase the punishment to the level of it being hilarious. So they understand that, yes, I'm angry, but I'm still joking.
Yeah.
So I will tell them that I will do something like absolutely out of the proportion hilarious.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I've noticed that people think that I'm not taking the thing seriously. Actually, it's the ultimate form of care if I come to a meeting and I want to make a joke. And it's a sign that I'm completely resigned if I don't take part in the conversation too much. So joking for me is a form of care. But
it is. Yeah. Can I say one thing about that just
Yes,
really quickly?
yes.
So I love I'm so happy you said that. So there's one of my favorite distinctions because I talk about this all the time, right? And one of the main things I teach is that you don't have to be serious to be successful. And so people think, oh, okay, well then I can just be aimless and I can sleep all day and I don't have to worry about anything. I said, well, that's not exactly the case. Alan Watts has the most brilliant distinction for this. It really is what got me started on this whole thing. Alan Watts' distinction is serious versus sincere, right? You don't have to be serious about life, but you want to be sincere about life. I want to pour all of my love and my attention and my creativity and my focus into the thing in front of me. I just don't want to take it overly seriously. I don't want to have such a tight grip on the thing that like all the blood is rushing into my knuckles all day. I want to hold it with a very loose grip. I want to hold it lightly. And so for you to go in there and tell jokes, what you're saying, at least in my mind, and what you're saying to your staff is, I'm so sincere about us having a good connection and being able to be in a relaxed place so we can talk about the things that we need to talk about, that I'm willing to make a joke to help us all relax into that place for the greater good of what it is we're trying to accomplish. Now, that's not serious, but it's extremely sincere. And that's what I think we're missing here, is this distinction between serious and sincere.
That's a very good distinction. Thank you for giving it to me, because that was one more of the thoughts I was having before having this conversation. But so how do we break this perception of the outside world? Because I had a colleague while ago, and we had this honest conversation in our team, and everybody was expressing their frustrations, and her frustration was, I feel degraded when you ask us to make jokes before the meeting. And I was so shocked, and since then we've never made jokes before the meeting.
Yeah. Now, did he or she, sorry, did you say it was she?
It was a she.
Okay, she. So was she degraded by hearing the jokes, or you asked her to tell a joke and that is what made her not feel good?
We took our jokes seriously, so we decided, okay, next week you will be telling the joke. So that was the situation. Of course, we would have said, don't make a joke if it's hard for you to make jokes, because if people say I can't tell jokes, it's legitimate. It's kind of legit. You can't tell jokes, fine, but I don't remember, because it was a while back. But the whole conversation around was that, you know, it's not serious. What are you talking about? I'm working here, and you come and you ask me to tell jokes, even if you don't ask me. Like, why this ridiculous thing? That was pretty much the context.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is why it's so important. And you said the perfect word there, context. Context is a huge thing for me. Like, we say this all the time in all of my teachings. It's always context before content, right? If we lead with content, we're just saying, hey, let's tell jokes because jokes are funny. And people that don't get that it's more than jokes being funny, they don't get the context, then they fight back and say, this is degrading, or I don't like this, or I don't know how to tell jokes. So that makes perfect sense. So in that situation, for me, I would have a conversation with that person privately and say, why do you think we make jokes? Oh, just because you guys like to tell jokes. Cool, that could be one reason. So here's another question for you. Do you tend to do better work when you're super stressed or when you're relaxed? And they'll probably say, well, yeah, I mean, if I'm relaxed, I get more done. If I'm stressed, I'm like all over the place. Cool. So for some people, humor relaxes them. I'm curious for you, what relaxes you? And then they say, oh, well, humor doesn't relax me, but if I like meditate for 3 minutes, I feel relaxed. Awesome. I would love for you to lead a 3-minute meditation at the beginning of our meeting next week. And now contextually, all the same stuff is there, but they get why you did it. They don't have to fight against it. They don't have to be resistant to it, and they get to do it in their own way.
I guess we never went into explaining the things. For me, it's been like a natural part of my life. And now that we've been talking, I realize for me, humor is sometimes an expression of me being stressed or under pressure. Because I realize that when I record, I have sometimes these days where I have to do recordings one after another, and your brain fries by the end of even half a day, because you're always, and I've noticed that I always make jokes. Like, I cannot be on a film set without being absolutely silly.
Yeah, and what does that do for you? So think about that. What is making jokes when you're stressed? What does that do for you? How does that change your state when you tell jokes?
I truly believe, because I like, you know, being a woman and a highly emotional, I'm very often like tense, And for me, laughing is like this vibration. It actually really helps to just start breathing deeper and and with more rhythm and be more relaxed. So definitely, and this is a realization of this conversation is, for me, humor is the way to relax.
Yeah,
To
it definitely
let it
is.
go, to let the stress and pressure go, and even like laughing, good belly laugh when you're laughing when you're almost on the floor,
Yeah.
that actually is so healing. You like, it's unbelievable, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. Is it pushed? Is it forced? Is it expression of fear or stress? Is it a mask? It doesn't matter at all. It has the effect.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that your biology will follow your physiology, right? So if you start to laugh, your body will start creating the hormones that will tell the brain, hey, we're actually in a good mood. Like, even if you're not. So a lot of times we think that there's this thing that says it's not, we don't dance because we're happy because we dance. Is that it? Yeah. We don't dance because we're happy because we dance, right? So you can do the thing. You don't have to program your brain to be, okay, I need to get happy first. Okay, now I need to go like listen to something funny and I need to get into a jokey mood. If you just start laughing about something, you don't even have anything to actually laugh about. They have these laughing meditations where they just start laughing. And look, you're laughing. So it works. Like you fake laugh, and then your body takes over and all of the hormones start flooding you and you get happier. So sometimes just doing the act of laughing, doing the act of something that's a little bit lighter will have you feel that. And so that's part of what you feel most likely when you're in this full day shoot and you need to feel some energy. You just make yourself laugh. You get yourself to laugh, and it releases that. And I remember the time that I really, really started to get the power of humor was when I was in graduate school, when I was doing my MBA. We had one professor, and it's funny enough, he was like the most popular professor in the entire school. We had one professor where every day when we walked in for class, he would have some funny YouTube video playing on the screen, like on all the big screens in the room. On the big screens, he'd have this funny video playing. And we would watch it and we would laugh and then we would get to work. And I remember after class one day, I went up to him, his name is Dr. Piccolo. And I said, Dr. Piccolo, I love these funny videos that you play. Like, why do you play those? And he said, it has been scientifically proven that if you can get people to laugh before they learn, they will observe and actually retain the knowledge better than if you go directly into teaching or if you start with something more serious. So he knew he was doing it intentionally, right? To relax us so that our minds were open and we weren't focused on all the minutia of whatever was in front of us, and we could actually learn what it was that he wanted to teach us. So from then on, I was like, yep, every one of my keynotes, you've seen me speak, see me host, see me whatever, I'm always bringing humor in, and it's because it's fun for me, but it's also because I want people to relax. If people are relaxed in their chairs, they're going to love the speakers they see so much more.
It's interesting because I think what I'm talking about often is dealing with your emotions, is going into whatever you dislike, into those dark corners, and part of it is not pretending. But on the other hand, I sometimes don't mind pretending and just starting to joke, even though I'm stressed and not happy, to get out of this mood. So I think the problem, because as you were talking, I was thinking, we're so used to very clear, simple messages. Do like this. And that's your mantra, and that's your rule, and that's how you live the whole life. But the truth is that it is always a balance. And that's why this whole concept of, a clown who is crying, because it's not one versus the other. It's not you're either very serious about your emotions and you look them straight in the face, or you're laughing it all off. It's both, but you have to find how to mix this both. When do you have to face it and not evade because that's unhealthy, versus when you have to say, okay, I'm done with that, now let me put on this medicine, and laughter is a medicine. So how do you balance that? I'm sure you're not always joking.
No, not at all. No, like I said, left to my own devices, I take things way too seriously. Like, that's why I need to do this work. This work is more to remind myself than it is for anybody else. If nobody ever heard any of my messages ever again the rest of my life, I'd still keep doing the work because I would need it for myself, right? So the goal for me, as much as possible, here's what I try to do, Kristina. I never want to spiritually bypass, right? And do the thing where it's like, as soon as something happens and I feel heavy, I go, it's for my greatest good. It's what the universe wants. It's like, well, maybe, but like, don't deny the fact that it feels like crap. That really sucks, right? Like, it's so funny how many people don't show compassion forget showing compassion to others, to themselves, right? There's this beautiful quote that you've probably heard before. If you're beating yourself up was going to work, it would have worked by now, right? Because we do this over and over and over again, right? So the big thing for me is like to recognize when I'm doing this, to recognize when I'm being really hard on myself, to recognize when I'm feeling really heavy, and not try to go directly into reframing it, not going directly into trying to find out what's funny about this or how it's for my greatest good. Sometimes it's me sitting there for a second and saying, you know what? This kind of sucks. This kind of doesn't feel the way I want it to feel. There's nothing wrong. You're not unevolved by acknowledging the fact that you feel something that you don't like the way it feels. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it wrong that you feel it, but to acknowledge that. And then what I've done to help shift myself out of that is I have these things called prison break questions. You can see over my shoulder is my book, Prison Break. It's backwards, so it says no serp care. It almost looks Russian backwards. So I have this thing that I do called prison break questions. And prison break questions, the role of a prison break question is not to solve a problem. It's to take what feels like a problem and make it no longer problematic, which makes no sense when I say it like that, but I'm just giving you the backstory. So the way it works, it's very, very simple. The format of it is, if I knew, what would I do, right? If I knew something to be true over here, what would I do? So for me, what that looks like for me, the prison break question that I've created for myself, and there's as many prison break questions as there are issues in the world, or more, is when I'm feeling some really heavy emotion, I acknowledge it. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling whatever. And I ask myself a prison break question. I say, if I knew that this feeling was going to magically disappear in 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes from now, without me doing anything, it was just going to poof, it was gone. If I knew this feeling was going to be gone by itself in 10 minutes, how would I treat myself for the next 10 minutes? How would I treat myself for the next 10 minutes? And the answer is never, you should beat yourself up. You should reframe this. You should tell yourself you're stupid. You should go yell at that person for saying whatever they said to you. No, if it's going to be gone in 10 minutes, then I'm just going to be kind to myself for the next 10 minutes. I'm just going to be compassionate to myself for the next 10 minutes. And what's funny is a lot of times in 10 minutes it goes away. Sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. But in the meantime, I'm not beating myself up just for feeling what I'm feeling.
That's cool. So, you've had quite a lot of things in your life.
I have.
Quite a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because when I started working in personal growth, I realized that some of the wisest teachers, the wisest, kindest, and more enlightened teachers have gone through quite dark times and a lot of mistakes. So do you think in this field, the field of humor, it's the same thing, that the funniest, most hilarious people are those who have felt the biggest pain?
I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think that you can see this, and there have been a lot of comedians who, if you look at their backstory, you go, holy crap, like how did they deal with that? And what it really shows me is that it's not specific to comedians, it's everybody. I truly believe that the human spirit is completely unbreakable, because me and you and every single person that's listening and watching this right now has been through some shit. I guarantee it. There's nobody watching this right now who's like, nope, privileged life. I came out of the womb. They handed me $2 billion and life has been perfect ever since. And even if they did, their life would not be perfect, because with everything handed to you, there's no drive, there's no ambition, so even people that have a ton of money, they're not immune to this either. But what I know to be true is that there is nothing you have gone through that you haven't been able to get through because you're here right now and we're talking and everybody that's watching this is watching this. The human spirit is unbreakable. Comedians have found a way to use humor to prove to themselves that their human spirit is unbreakable. For some of us, it's meditation. For some of us, it's cooking. For some of us, it's crafts. For some of us, it's just connection. It's being with other people or being parents or being whatever it is. There's so many different ways that you can channel that. But the fact of the matter is the human spirit is unbreakable, and you need to find the vehicle, the outlet for yourself that allows you to remind yourself of that over and over. Comedians just use humor.
I wanted to be serious now, because laughing is not serious.
Let me sit up straight. Okay. I'm ready.
The thing is that everybody understands that laughter is good. They even say, it's probably not scientifically proven, but they say that a certain amount of laughter prolongs your life and whatnot. It's definitely good. It's healthy. We love to laugh. I don't know any single person who doesn't like to laugh.
Yeah,
they
of course not.
Maybe not publicly, but they do laugh.
Yeah.
So why is this either or? why is it, where did that come from? Because even before this meeting, I was thinking, yeah, I'm very leisurely, I take life not seriously, but does that make me lazy? Does that make, you know, I want to enjoy, I don't want to be stressed. And when things start breaking into pieces, I laugh, maybe because it's an expression of, like, you know, desperation. I'm desperate. There's nothing good about it anymore. Let's just start laughing now. But where did this come from? Either or. You cannot be serious. You cannot work. You cannot show up to the meetings like not in a serious mood, because people will just say like, you are not taking it seriously enough. Where does it come from? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, I spent 15 years in corporate before I became an entrepreneur. So I was in tech for the majority of that 15 years, pretty much all the 15 years. And the last 7 years of it, I was in IT consulting, very serious business, right? Like I'm talking about, we're doing IT systems for hospitals and banks. They don't want you screwing around and laughing. Everything's very serious. But it's because we've equated seriousness with attention to detail. We've equated seriousness with a level of care. And worst of all, this is actually the worst one. Those first two are actually well-intentioned, right? I'm going to be super serious because I want to do a good job. I'm going to be super serious because I want to make sure that it's a quality product or a quality service. Like that's at least well-intentioned. The problem that I think has occurred here is that the majority of people who are serious, they do it because they feel like if they don't act serious, that people will think that they don't care. Right? They think they have to be serious in order to show people that they actually do care, as opposed to doing really good work and being light, right? Being lighthearted, but also still showing up and doing the work and doing all these things. So in corporate especially, I would make sure to be serious. And partly it can be an age thing, it can be a gender thing. I was a very young person. I was 26 years old and director of this tech firm, where everybody else, people that reported to me, were older than me, a lot of them. And so it was kind of a strange thing. And so I felt like I had to be super serious. And then I realized one day that me being super serious was just keeping the status quo the same, right? And now it actually looked worse, because I'm already the young guy, and now I'm trying to like be serious so people will take me seriously, and that wasn't working either. So I took a step back and I said, okay, what do I really want to have here? The men and the women that work for me, very high level engineers making a lot of money, and they were so overworked, they were so overburdened, they were stressed, they were anxious, they were just getting burnt out. And I realized they didn't need a boss who was serious. They needed a boss who was willing to connect with them and find out what was going on in their world. And so I instituted this weekly coaching. I had never done anything with coaching before. This is way before I became a coach. I had never even heard of coaching before. I thought when you have like meetings with your team, like one-on-one, it's just to be like, where are we at with project X? Where are we at with project Y? When can I expect this from project Z? That's it. That's what a meeting's supposed to be. But when I really slowed down and they sat down across from me, and I told them, I sent out an email to my whole team and I said, hey guys, from now on, every week we're going to have a meeting together. It's going to be 45 minutes long, and kind of here's what we're going to be doing. And they were all like, this sounds really weird. So we came in and we sat down, and as soon as they sat down, they said, okay, so here's where we're at with so-and-so project. I'm like, no, wait, that's cool. How was your weekend? I'm like, yeah, it was good. So anyways, this project, I'm like, wasn't it Sally's third birthday this weekend? He's like, yeah, it was. I was like, cool, how'd that go? It was really fun. We took her to the zoo with all our friends, and they had a lot of fun. I'm like, oh, really? Do you have any pictures? Like, yeah, you want to see him? Like, yeah, all right, cool. And we start connecting, and all of a sudden, I'm not being serious, but they leave that meeting and they go, wow, he actually gives a crap. Like, that's amazing. So instead of pretending we give a crap by being overly serious, we can show that we give a crap by giving a crap. Crazy, I know, completely insane.
You know, it's interesting because when I get into that mode of talking other things as well, people say, oh, we're wasting time. We're here for a meeting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that we come for a meeting and we believe that anything about life is wasting time.
Yeah.
What is more important?
Yeah. And here's the thing about that is that the reason that outlook exists in my mind is because we look at things in too narrow of a view, too short-sighted of a view. You talking with somebody about something personal inside of a meeting, it's not for that meeting. It's for 6 months from now when everything's falling apart and they don't know who they can turn to, and they remember, oh, Kristina cares about me. Like she actually cares about me more than just an employee. I'm going to go talk to her about what's going on in my life instead of isolating or going and drinking or not showing up for work or doing a crappy job or burning myself out. Setting those intentions, planting those seeds of being with somebody. It's not for that moment that you plant the seeds. It's for when shit hits the fan 6 months later, so everybody sticks together.
Interesting. Because in business, how many times have I said, yeah, this decision short term is not going to be very easy, but it is what we need for the long term. And everybody who has run business knows that's the most important part about any strategic decisions about your business is looking way further than just instant gratification. Yeah. And thank you for giving me all those ideas and some scientific research, because I'm now going to take fun much more seriously.
Good. Success.
I think we don't take it seriously enough. No, truly, I believe we don't take fun seriously enough.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, we really have to see that if we want people to perform at their best, they have to have periods of relaxation. Now, listen, this doesn't mean you're going to be relaxed all the time, right? Stress is not a bad thing, right? Feeling a level of stress can actually motivate you to get things done. The problem is when we live in the prolonged feeling of stress constantly. Our bodies and minds were not meant for that. Our bodies and minds were meant for hits of adrenaline, hits of stress, hits of like getting in there and doing the thing and being intense. But it's not something that we can do all the time. It runs our system down. So we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our families, to our friends, to our teams, to our customers, to whatever, to try to be at least 5% more lighthearted. You don't have to be funny. You don't have to tell jokes. You don't have to become a comedian. Just have a slightly lighter outlook on life, and everybody around you will have so much more fun being around you. What is Mr. Sublime Zen says? Seriously fun, seriously. Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Seriously fun, seriously. I love it.
It's because as you were saying, another thing that I realized, that the whole problem with trying to appear serious is actually just appearance. It's just the masks. We try to appear serious because if we don't appear serious, people think we don't care enough.
Some of this also, if you really want to get deep into this, a lot of this comes from being a kid. And however you were raised when you were younger, of how you were supposed to act, that gets locked in. And anything that doesn't fit into the paradigm of the way people are supposed to act when they're in professional environments is something that you just abhor, that you want to stay away from. And on the other side of that, there's something else. If there's something that triggers us about somebody else, a lot of times it's because we wish we embodied more of it, right? So when somebody gets upset that somebody else is making jokes in a staff meeting, a lot of times it's because they wish they had the courage to say something funny, they have a funny joke in their head and they don't say it because they don't want to be taken not seriously. So a lot of times it's that people feel like they need permission. So I'm hoping that what I do in the world more than anything is give people a model and an example that you can be more lighthearted and people still will look to you and still take you seriously as somebody to look at.
I have two models I was thinking about right now,
yeah.
And I don't know many famous people, but these two people puzzled me because I didn't expect that. And the number one is Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
When I first met him, I was absolutely shocked because this dude is just joking all the time.
Oh yeah, big time.
I don't think he even says anything without having a little bit of a, cheeky thought somewhere on the background.
Yep.
And that was a shock for me. I didn't expect, because Dalai Lama, we imagine he's like some kind of, and again, enlightened, kind, loving person. And he's joking. Another person who's, and I think everybody knows, is Richard Branson. He's like, he loves a good joke. He is as unserious as can be, and yet super successful and takes everything with big passion. He's a super passionate person. And as we were talking, I actually remembered one more person who, when you talk to him, you don't know if he's joking or not. Neil Donald Walsh.
That is true. That's a very good point. That's a very, very, very good point. Did you ever see, there's a book that was written by, it was written by a third party, but about a relationship between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And it's actually called the Book of Joy. And it's the two of them hanging out together, and they are just cracking jokes the entire day, right? And they are two of the most sincere people you could think of when it comes to their religion or their background or their culture or their spirituality, however you package that. And it's because they realize that, I think part of what they realize and part of what we forget, and we see this a lot. I live in Los Angeles. So, just a few weeks ago, we lost Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant was this, superhuman basketball player. And what happens when somebody who's a famous person passes away, unfortunately, it doesn't happen nearly as much with just everyday people, is that we are reminded of our own mortality, right? And if somebody that big and that larger than life and that rich and that successful can just be gone in a second, we start questioning our own, like, oh crap, that can happen to me. I think that's a big part of what the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu and probably even Richard Branson understand is their own mortality. Like, you're going to die at some point. There's an Egyptian culture, this Egyptian custom rather, where they have parties and they actually bring out skeletons, right? And they have this thing that says, drink and be merry, because one day you're going to look like this, right? And it's a reminder of, like, we don't have to take this stuff so seriously, because we're all going to die one day. And that's a beautiful reminder. And we've seen this, right? We've seen this when there's like, oh my God, there's just so much going on at work. I'm just so busy. And like, oh man, it's just crazy. And the boss is just this and the boss is that. And then your spouse or your kid or your best friend gets in a car accident or gets rushed to the hospital or something happens. And all of a sudden, work's not that important anymore. So why do we have to wait for something bad to happen for us to come back to center and reprioritize? Doesn't mean you don't put in your best at work. It doesn't mean you're not sincere about the work you're doing, but it's putting it all in perspective. I'm going to be dead. I better enjoy what I have of life here as long as I can.
I think it's important. I'm really grateful we had this topic for this conversation, because I'm losing a little bit of my jokiness from time to time. You know, time sometimes like overwhelms you, and then you think like, oh, and you really put it back into the radar that it's not just for me. It's actually, it is my mission to still keep taking things lighthearted, because when you ask, why do I joke on a film set? It's not just for me to relax. I want the team to be relaxed. I want them to laugh. When they smile, it's easier for me to work. So it's not just for me.
It never is. That's one of those beautiful things in life, is that anytime you do anything that's for others, it always comes back and it's for you as well. So yeah, make people laugh. Whatever it is, if we went out there in the world and helped people get more of what they want, we would get everything we ever wanted. So if you go out there and help people to have more joy, to be more happy, to have more laughter, if you go out there and purposefully do that in the world, you will get everything you've ever wanted in the world returned to you.